Our next guest says while the U.S. housing market is recovering, it's not quite happening in the way some people think it is. Jeff Taylor is managing partner at Digital Risk. It's the biggest mortgage processor in the United States. He joins us from New York. Good to see you, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we have seen some mixed messages out of the U.S. housing market in terms of the data the last several months. Why are we seeing this, and how much of this has to do with the weather?
You know, so the weather, people have been talking, it's been top of mind and top of topic, but realistically, I think the housing start numbers, which are below 50%, is not so much directly to the weather. It really has to do with the fact that in 2007, when the bust happened, the labor force that really was driving all these housing construction basically dissipated. People went out of business. People found other jobs. So as the market has come back really strongly in the last 12 to 18 months, the rate of actually building those houses is not caught up with the labor force. And on top of that, you have a combination of the new compliance rules and regulations, Dodd-Frank, that's gone into place. So you look at that first-time home buyer between 25 and 35 years old, and right now their debt-to-income ratio, which needs to be 43 by regulation now for a qualified mortgage, is more like in the 60 because of student loans, etc. So they're not qualifying for mortgages, and they're going ahead and renting right now.
And then, Jeff, I'm wondering how much unemployment or underemployment affects these kinds of numbers, and income's not rising as well.
Absolutely. When we look back historically, the new jobs creation has been under 200,000 for the last year or so. What we'd really like to take a look at, that median income. If we could get around 6 months of job creation of around 200,000 jobs, I think we're going to see a lot more income come back into the system, which means people have more money, which means they have the ability to put a down payment on the house and buy a house. Because at the end of the day, these are historically low interest rates. We're never going to be here again. So if you have an ability to buy a house right now, it's an amazing time to do it.
I understand that about 40% of housing deals are cash deals, and you'd rather see it at around 20%. What does the 40% figure tell you about the market?
And the 48% tells me, you know, absolutely spot on that this is an investor-driven market right now. And so even though we're seeing housing stabilize, we're seeing house price appreciation, it's not how we had seen historically over the last 20, 30 years coming out of recession. These are investors buying these loans that are holding them to potentially rent or sell at some point in the future. So what I'd really like to see over the course of the next year is that number drop somewhere down around 20%, because that's going to show me that the consumers are really coming back into the market, buying houses, and that really projects for an overall economic recovery, where right now I think it's still slanted a little bit too heavy in the investor way.
Jeff, we have a company up here called Tricon, and their specialty is to buy U.S. Residential housing, fix them up a bit, rent them out, and we know that lots of private equity in the U.S. is doing that as well. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Does that end badly, or how do you see it playing out?
Now, you know what? Smart money always finds a way. And I got to tell you, when the markets basically collapsed, what did these large funds start doing? They started looking at an asset class, i.e. U.S. housing, that they could buy cheap, knowing that if they held it for a period of time, rented it out, they could go ahead and sell it at a profit. So I think it's actually a great play for those investors who got in 09, 2010, 2011, and I think that they'll sell at the right time. They have the ability to hold on for as long as necessary. So I think it's actually a very, very good thing. However, one thing it does do is make for very tight inventories across the nation. So if you are a consumer looking for a house right now in some areas, South Florida is a perfect example. It's very hard to find inventory because a lot of these investors have gone ahead and bought those houses.
It used to be, as part of the American dream, Jeff, that that meant owning your own home. Has that sort of dream died to a degree, or at least waned for some people?
You know, it's funny. About a year ago, on a Schiller survey, we saw Americans really starting to come back and thinking, okay, buying my house was a sure sign sort of wealth creation. Lately, we're starting to see a trend of about 6% down to the recent poll around 3%, where they're not looking at it as an opportunity for wealth creation, so they're actually starting to rent a little bit more. So that sort of psychological effect also has some part to do with should they buy now or rent. So right now I think that's also a part of why certain people are renting.
And just lastly, Jeff, I want to go back to this idea that the builders are having trouble finding labor to build homes. But are they also, as well, say a Lennar, for example, or pick a name, they're holding back some building to have a good equilibrium in the market? Does that make sense at all?
You know, Lennar is the perfect example. I don't think they're holding back at all. I think actually Lennar is one of the leaders in the home building industry and probably my top choice as far as lenders, as builders out there. So I think what they're doing is a fantastic job. I don't think anybody's holding back. Again, I think it's really sort of a supply and demand like everything else in life, right? If you don't have the ability to go ahead and put up the houses, then you simply don't. Again, there are parts of the country right now, Miami, take it again, where there are skyscrapers all along the lines where people just 2 years ago were saying that we had a 13-year inventory. Well, that 13-year inventory went in 13 months.
That's quite a figure. Thanks for the insight, Jeff. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Jeff Taylor, managing partner at Digital Risk. It's the biggest mortgage processor in the United States.